Things have actually kind of changed this year with the end of grade tests and everything. First of all, just kind of let you know, right now the date is slated for the week of May 20th. Again, this is grades 3, 4, and 5. Third grade will take what they've done in the past. They'll take reading and math, fourth grade reading and math, and then fifth grade reading, math, and science. A couple of the major changes this year with the program is that we will not actually get the data back until probably mid to end October this year. So that will probably also be the earliest when parents will get information back as well. And so as far as one of the things that will do for us at the school is, that is obviously one of the pieces of data that we sometimes have used in grades 3, 4, and 5 as we start looking at some of our grouping and things like that for the departmentalized settings or for our grouping in those classes. And so it'll be extra important during that time for our teachers to really do a lot of pre-assessment to kind of see where those students are at when we start making those original groups, as well as talking with some of the previous teachers to see how the students are doing academically. So that's one of the major changes, is that we will not actually get that data now until probably mid to late October, whereas we have actually gotten the data earlier in the past. Another big change is there will actually be no retest this year either. In the past, there has always been a retest. In a case where a child has scored a level 1 or scored a level 2, about a week and a half later, they were actually had the opportunity to do a retest to see if they could improve their score and everything. This year, there will actually be no retest either. So those are two major changes that are coming down the pike as far as the state testing go. Also, something that you may have been hearing a little bit about is the measures of student learning. These are additional tests that have been created through the state and through the district that this year mainly 4th and 5th graders will be working on. Right now we haven't got a whole lot of information about them. Right now the tentative dates are actually the week after the end of grades, so it would actually be the week of the 28th, I believe. And basically what this would amount to is that 4th graders would take an assessment in science and social studies this year, and since 5th grade already does science, they would actually take a social studies version this year.
And I think it's very important to make parents aware, because the first thing that typically pops to a parent's head is, oh, we're testing our kids to death. And though there are more tests, I think at this school we really try to do a good job of buffering that process. We don't do the formatives what the school system does this year. We've totally taken those off the books, so that's a series of tests that we used to do that we don't do. So really, in reality, the majority of the tests you see are what are called common assessments, which would be just your normal unit type test that you would see. We do running records with our students and different things, but those are informal types of assessments that we do on a regular basis. And the other key thing is, this is not Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. This is the state of North Carolina. And any state that opted in to federal aid have had to come up with these types of tests. So when federal aid was linked in a few years ago, when the budgets were struggling, most states did this. They opted into these programs, and as part of that process, they had to come up with assessment tools to measure growth if they were going to get money. So that money was tied to these assessments. So these are state tests. So in Iredell, Statesville, Cabarrus County, Union County, anywhere in the state of North Carolina, the students will be going through the same processes in regard to what Mr. Otalski is talking about. This is not a Charlotte-Mecklenburg school thing where you're hearing about we're just constantly testing our students. This is the state of North Carolina, and there's a lot of states going through the same exact thing.
And again, even though that we haven't got tons of information yet, as far as these measurements of student learning goes, and basically, like I said, they're only going to affect 4th and 5th grade this year. Based on the little information we have received, it will be coming down the pike in the future. Well, this will actually be kindergarten up. So eventually our students will be taking these type of assessments, which would probably be similar to what we've done a couple years ago when we had the summative tests that were going on and everything. I would guess it'd be along the same lines.
Right. An example of that would be in kindergarten, they'll be taking them one-on-one.
Yes.
It's not like students will be sitting there with a pencil and you're going to be doing a bubble test like you would in 4th or 5th grade. The process is quite different depending on the developmental needs of the child.
Usually in 1st
don't
grade,
think that your 5-year-old is going to be sitting in a row having to bubble in answer sheets.
Usually in 1st and even in 2nd grade, a lot of the tests are small group, or they're actually a one-on-one setting and everything. But I did just want to give you kind of an update of where testing is going, and as we continue to get more information on that, we'll get that out to you guys as well. Any questions?
I have a quick one. So I heard someone say that they're thinking about taking them on a computer. Is that true? Or is
They
that
have
We're not
talked.
thinking about it, that's happening.
Yeah, they have talked for years about putting them on the computer. I know in the last couple of years, we've actually, for some of our Extend 2 students, we've actually piloted where we've had them take them on the computer, and that is something coming down the pike, where they will be taking them on the computer. Now, they have not actually spoken to us or given us a whole lot about the logistics of that would happen. Because I think, and I look at just our school, for example, where if I were to take 3, 4, and 5, you're probably looking at 600 and some students. Obviously, we don't have 600 computers.
Well, that's what I didn't know
Yeah.
how to do.
Right now, the state of North Carolina says that in the year 2013-14, all tests are supposed to be online. Now, you have to remember that this was decided on years ago, as part of a plan of incremental processes. And so they said, it's kind of like when you look at No Child Left Behind, they said by X year, 100% of the students will be proficient. You set those incremental goals, but the reality is right now, the state of North Carolina is in the red. So are they going to be able to feasibly make that happen? That's going to be up for discussion. As of right now, the plan is by the state that our children will have to take the tests on a computer. But that could change.
This year?
No.
2013.
But that could change easily if the funding's not going to be available, because that's going to be a huge problem.
And at this point, nobody has really given a significant answer. I mean, I know when I've gone to testing and accountability meetings, that's obviously one of the things that we ask, and basically we get a lot of raised shoulders right now. Nobody really knows exactly if that is going to come to fruition actually next year. Nobody actually knows how that's going to happen. Again, I look at our school where I would have 600 kids taking a test on computer, looking at the manpower and everything else. So again, that was something like Mr. G said, that they obviously had put in place a couple years ago. It is coming down the pike. Right now, the expectation is that it would be rolled out next year, but nobody has any real information as to exactly how that would work out yet. So again, that would be something I would get out to people as we get more information as well. I mean, typically, I go to our end of grade accountability testing meeting usually around March or April, and so I would guess at that point that they may give us a little bit more information how those things would work.
Is EOG computer testing available as an accommodation for individuals?
Not right now.
Not right now, it's not.
Is there any chance that could be?
That I don't know. Nobody has talked about that yet. Based on like EOC guidelines, EC guidelines, 504 guidelines, even ESL guidelines and things like that, that's not one of the recommended approved accommodations right now at this point. But that may definitely be something that, as we move into this process, that may move into the
very
future.
interesting. I hadn't even thought of it until you just.
Yeah. I say I think about it, just thinking when they talk about it, just about the manpower and the tools, and I think about just the pros and cons of what can happen. I mean, I know last year when we piloted the Extend 2 version of it, I mean, I only had about 5 or 6 kids in the lab, and I would go down, I would get everything set up. By the time I got back to the front office, I was getting called back down because somebody had kicked themselves out of the program.
Yeah.
And I would go back and reset the program. So, I just constantly think of the logistics of that, of how that would be done. So, obviously, those are things that they're working on and they're talking about. And, as we get more information, we'll get that out to the parents and families as well.
All right, well, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I hope,
I have another.
yes, sir, go ahead.
I was waiting for the general time. I guess it's.
Go ahead. No, general time is now. Go ahead.
Regarding the new school, we're split Torrance Creek, and a year ago, we were speculating that we might do a big reshuffle, and apparently that's not happening.
It's a good question. Mr. McClure's question is in regard to the lines, and it is something that I would be very aware of. If you look at the numbers in the different schools right now, I don't know how much people have been doing research on this. Cornelius is about 680 in regard to student population. We're at 1,100. I think Huntersville is under 800 at this particular moment. Blythe is about exactly the same as we are. Torrance Creek is at 12 and some change, I think. Barnett is also in the low 7s, which is over off of Beatty's Ford Road. So you would see that there's some discrepancies in regard to the different schools up in this area, and it would make sense to me that that would be something that would be looked at closely. Could also impact the high schools because, you know, demographically that shifted North Mech's population a great deal when they built Huff. So I do know this. I've spoken to Ronna Lennon a couple times, and I know she came here one time and spoke. It's definitely not changing for next year. Okay. I know that she is running for office again. She would be a good person to begin that conversation with. I don't know, you know, it's one of those things that makes sense to us because we are so large, but it really creates a lot of animosity in some schools because of the shifts. For example would be, I have friends that live in Ballantyne, and they started off at Hawk Ridge. Since they started elementary school, their children have been to 3 elementary schools because of constant shifts in population. So I can see it from both perspectives, but when you look at it on paper, I understand exactly what you're saying because, you know, right now it would seem that it would be very easy, and I don't know if anybody lives in these neighborhoods or not, but don't take offense, but it would seem very easy to take Antiquity and give Antiquity to either Cornelius or Davidson. And I didn't mention Davidson, their numbers have dipped a little as well. And that right now Antiquity is ours because when Antiquity was created, our numbers were not that elevated. They ended up giving us that little finger that sticks out, and that actually butts up to Town Hall and Cornelius and actually butts up to Davidson Elementary practically. Yeah. Another one that constantly comes up is Birkdale on the shop side. Whether that'll ever happen or not, I don't know. Then there's always the areas behind Target. Those areas come up as areas, you know, why are they coming to Washam versus somewhere else? Those are all discussions that will have to be held, but Ms. Lennon would be the one that will drive that conversation when the time comes. But I do know that next year nothing's being changed. Yes, but that's a very good question.
My concern is, I mean, clearly our situation isn't optimal by any means.
No, and you know, and right now we haven't gotten our numbers for next year. Yeah. We usually do in about probably 2 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks we'll start getting soft numbers. My estimation, what me and Mr. Atalski have been looking at is I'm assuming that we'll gain 30 to 40 kids. That's about how we've been moving every single year. So that'll move us closer to 1,200. Yes?
Last question.
Yeah.
Quick. And I guess those new numbers you're sort of estimating or guesstimating based on like the apartments being built on Westmoreland and then the new, because you're looking around and there's several what I would consider high density elementary school age kind of areas. Caldwell Stations continues to add a few more, and we have some more developed stuff. Antiquity's adding more, and that it would seem like 40 would almost be low compared.
Yeah, and you don't know. I mean, I keep hoping because it says luxury apartments that it's going to be adults only. So you know, I keep praying for that, but you know, I don't know. When they do that in placement, it's not anything that we actually are a part of at the schoolhouse. They go through whatever statistical analysis that they use, and then they just give us a series of numbers. Sometimes they hit dead on, but other times they don't. As we've talked about over the years, you know, sometimes we're right on the mark in regard to what our grade levels are supposed to be, and other times we're, you know, class is off the mark. So, you know, I'm sure that they're accounting for that. The other thing that we have seen over the last, and really it's been over 2 years now, the fluidity of our school population has increased immensely. A perfect example is we have 5 new students starting after President's Day. That was unheard of when I came here 6 years ago. It was really prior to Christmas was your movement time. After Christmas, it was pretty stabilized. You know, you really wouldn't have kids coming or going for that matter. And we are seeing more and more, I think mainly because of the job market, we are seeing more and more people coming into area or coming into the Charlotte area, moving in with family members, families increasing in size, so it's not just the, you know, your regular family becomes more nuclear. We're seeing some changes that we haven't really seen before that is increasing our class sizes a lot at weird times. So it is something that has become much more fluid for us, which makes it interesting in regard to the planning piece for sure. Yeah, but both good questions, really good questions. But Rhonda would be, if she ends up being reelected, would be the person that would kind of drive that with the school board, because we're her constituency. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
We just have one more thing. We just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Who's a good artist?
Well, it would be our lovely art teacher, Miss Doolin. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and spending time with us and giving us the inside scoop. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you guys for, and thanks to all the regulars. I do appreciate you. It makes it feel a little bit more welcoming, and it's something that a lot of schools have started to do because of what we've done here at this school. So I think it's something that it should be what we're doing at every school. So thank you guys for being a part of it. But have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
All right.